even more pressure on him and gives us more leverage in those negotiations.
Yeah, the president indicated that he does not want to resume major combat operations. He said if we did do that, you'd have the strait closed for another 2 to 3 to 4 months, and he doesn't want that. And he keeps saying we're very close, we're days away, and I don't know what that means. We've heard that for a very long time. I mean, oil has gone down. It was closed at, I think, 89 today, but gas prices are very high, and there's a lot of people in the administration, I think, that would like to see the job finish, and others think that, you know, we're pretty close. But what do we know?
That has never stopped us.
Yeah.
Too bad they demonized Tesla, Jesse.
We'll continue to.
There's a scene playing out right now in American foreign policy that feels borrowed from a Hollywood script, and that's not an accident. When the President of the United States posts a clip from a 25-year-old television drama to signal his military intentions to a foreign adversary, something worth examining is happening beneath the surface. Not just politically, psychologically, strategically. And the implications run deeper than most coverage has bothered to unpack. Let's get into it. A U.S. Army Apache helicopter was shot down over the Strait of Hormuz. That's the starting point. Iranian forces downed it, the pilot survived, and within hours the situation escalated into something far more complicated than a single military incident. Because the response from Washington wasn't a press briefing. It wasn't a coordinated diplomatic statement from the State Department. It was a Truth Social post, followed by a clip from the West Wing. Specifically, Season 1, Episode 3. A fictional president named Jed Bartlett, played by Martin Sheen, delivering a famous monologue about why proportional military responses are, in his view, insufficient. The line that matters, "You kill an American, any American, we don't come back with a proportional response. We come back with total disaster." Now sit with that for a second. The sitting President of the United States used a fictional television speech to communicate his intended posture toward a live military conflict. That detail alone deserves more analysis than it's getting.
We are going to issue a report tomorrow, but the pilots are fine, yeah.
Sir, did you say 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks?
2 or 3 days.
You'll be signing a peace agreement?
No, we have a good chance of doing it. We should be able to do it in 1 hour, if you want to know the truth.
What's the biggest sticking point right now?
I don't think there are any sticking points. I think we're very close to having a very, very good, strong, powerful deal. If we go and bomb, which we can do very easily if we want, and we spend another 2 or 3 weeks bombing, they'll have nothing left whatsoever. But you won't have the strait open for months. If we do the bombing, you know, a lot of people are going to be killed. Who wants to do that? I don't. And we'll have a signed document that's actually stronger than doing the bombing. What has proven to be a very powerful thing is the blockade. The blockades turned out to be much stronger than bombing. And it was really a combination. It was our initial thrust and then the blockade. But, you know, their economy is really suffering, and they're going to make a deal.
Here's what makes this moment genuinely significant from a strategic communications standpoint. In crisis diplomacy, signaling matters enormously. What you say, how you say it, and through what channel you say it, these are not trivial choices. Heads of state, national security advisors, foreign ministries, they all watch American signals carefully, reading them for intent, resolve, and capability. So when the signal is a TV clip, not a formal address, not a coordinated Pentagon statement, not even a direct verbal threat, what does that communicate to Tehran, to allies in the region, to NATO partners watching from a distance? It communicates uncertainty. And uncertainty in geopolitics is not the same as strength. It can look like strength for a moment, but sophisticated foreign policy observers, and Iran has them, read ambiguity very differently than they read clarity. The message being sent is not, "We are powerful and resolved." The message being received may be something closer to, "We are still figuring out what we want to do." And that brings us to the larger strategic picture that this episode is sitting inside. For months now, the administration has been navigating an extraordinarily complex Iran situation. There have been bombing campaigns. There have been blockade considerations. There have been back-channel diplomatic efforts involving envoys and negotiations that the public only gets glimpses of. And in a moment that didn't get nearly enough attention, the president himself acknowledged, in a press exchange, that the bombing campaign, while significant, was not as decisive as initially framed. He pointed to economic pressure and blockade strategy as what's actually moving the needle. His words, not a critic's interpretation. That admission matters, because it reframes the entire posture of the past several months. If the bombing wasn't the decisive instrument, and the economic pressure is what's working, then the disproportionate threat being telegraphed through a West Wing clip isn't a natural escalation of a working strategy. It's a pivot. A rhetorical pivot that doesn't obviously connect to the operational reality the president just described. That gap between what's publicly threatened and what's privately acknowledged to be effective is where the credibility question lives. There's a concept in foreign policy called threat inflation. It's what happens when a government repeatedly signals a willingness to escalate without following through. The first time you threaten, adversaries take it seriously. The second time, slightly less so. By the fourth or fifth time the same red line is drawn without consequence, the threat loses its functional value. This is not a partisan observation. Foreign policy scholars across the ideological spectrum have written about this dynamic for decades. It applies to administrations of both parties. The challenge the current administration faces is that the escalatory rhetoric has been a consistent feature of its Iran posture, and the follow-through has been inconsistent, which means that even when the rhetoric intensifies, even when it reaches the level of invoking total disaster language, the audience it's meant to influence has already developed a certain calibration for what these signals actually mean. That's not strength. That's a credibility debt that compounds over time. Now let's talk about the West Wing choice specifically, because it's a fascinating window into how this presidency communicates. Jed Bartlett is one of the most beloved fictional presidents in American pop culture. Educated, articulate, morally serious, capable of genuine gravitas. The show ran from 1999 to 2006 and won 4 consecutive Emmy Awards for Outstanding Drama Series. It shaped how an entire generation of politically engaged Americans thought about what the presidency could look like. Using that imagery is not random. It's an appeal to a particular emotional register, one associated with presidential strength, moral clarity, and decisive leadership. But here's the tension that makes this so interesting to analyze. The fictional president in that scene was reacting to the killing of an American doctor in a foreign country. A clear, deliberate act of murder against a civilian. And even then, the episode treats the instinct toward disproportionate response as something to be examined critically, not celebrated uncritically. The current situation involves a downed military helicopter in an active conflict zone, with both pilots confirmed alive. That's a meaningfully different set of facts.
And Susan Collins has never met a war she didn't like. She's been supporting endless wars since I was a teenager, and I know I had to fight in 2 of them. Senator Collins, I got blown up while you handed out billions of dollars to defense companies that invest in you. Sorry, that you're invested in. You and your friends profited, and my friends died. Susan Collins has voted to send billions of our taxpayer dollars to fund other people's wars. Susan Collins, how do you justify closing hospitals in Maine while using our tax dollars to destroy them halfway around the world?
Applying the total disaster framework to that specific incident through the emotional vehicle of a television drama is a rhetorical move that doesn't obviously fit the proportions of what actually happened. The optics are complicated, and the people in Tehran are watching the optics. There's something else worth naming here, which is the domestic political dimension of all of this. When foreign policy decisions start getting communicated primarily through social media posts and television references rather than formal channels, part of what's happening is audience management. The primary audience isn't always Tehran. Sometimes it's the American public, specifically the portion of the public whose support is most politically essential. Projecting strength, even rhetorically, even through borrowed fictional imagery, serves a domestic purpose. It creates a narrative of resolve. It feeds a certain story about who's in charge and what they're willing to do. But there's a cost to governing primarily through narrative. The gap between the story and the operational reality eventually becomes visible, especially in a conflict that's been ongoing long enough for people to notice what's happened and what hasn't. At some point, the questions become unavoidable. Where is the deal? What is the actual off-ramp? What does a successful conclusion to this situation look like, and how does the current strategy lead there? Those questions deserve more airtime than they're getting. Meanwhile, the political opposition is in a complicated position of its own. The anti-war argument in American politics has historically struggled to find a mainstream vehicle. It tends to get pushed to the margins, characterized as naive or disloyal to American security interests. But the conditions for that argument to land with broader audiences are arguably more present right now than they've been in years. An ongoing conflict with no clear endgame. A bombing campaign that the president himself has described in mixed terms. Economic pressure on American consumers tied to instability in the region. Military personnel in harm's way with no obvious timeline for resolution. That's a set of facts that should open space for serious, substantive policy debate, not reactive outrage, not mirror image escalatory rhetoric, but genuine alternative vision. What does responsible engagement with this situation look like? What are the tools that haven't been fully used? What does a durable resolution require? The politicians who figure out how to make that case clearly, compellingly, and without either naivete or performative hawkishness, those are the ones who will find an audience ready to listen. There's a broader point underneath all of this that I think gets lost in the day-to-day coverage cycle. We are living in a moment where the line between political performance and actual governance has become genuinely difficult to locate. Social media posts that function as foreign policy signals. Television clips that stand in for military doctrine. The theater of strength and the substance of strategy are increasingly hard to distinguish, not just for outside observers, but potentially for the people making the decisions. That's not a partisan critique, it's a structural observation about how power is being communicated in this era. And it matters because real people, in uniform, in conflict zones, in countries on the receiving end of these signals, are living inside the consequences of that communication. A West Wing clip on Truth Social isn't just media noise. It's a data point in how the most powerful country on earth is choosing to project itself at a moment of genuine geopolitical tension. That deserves to be taken seriously, examined carefully, and understood for what it actually is. Not a sign of strength, not a sign of collapse, but a signal worth reading with clear eyes and without the distortion of either cheerleading or panic. That's the kind of analysis this moment demands. If you want more coverage that focuses on strategy, context, and the bigger picture rather than just the reaction cycle, subscribe and stick around. There's a lot more to get into.